I'm now in a position to start the delivery of the presentation. The delivery of the presentation is really about presenting in a style that best suits you, the audience, and the context. And this we can broadly talk about different styles as you might have a persuader where you're trying to sell an idea, or a motivator where you're trying to call for action, a lecturer where you're just sharing your information and knowledge with people, or a philosopher where you're introspecting and reflecting on something with the group. You also think about your body language, things like your non-verbal cues that we talked about earlier, your posture, having an open body language, making sure that you're smiling, eye contact with all of the room, making sure that you're really connected and drawing everybody in, using your voice, like we talked about earlier, to your advantage, your intonations going up and down, your pitch, your speed, your pace, all those things so that you're not being monotonous and not allowing anyone to zone out. You're also using your facilitation skills, like I talked about in the meeting component of this unit, where you're drawing people in as required. You're acknowledging great contributions from others and so forth. The other thing as well to incorporate in your delivery are the use of visual aids. Visual aids can be a terrific tool to help people to understand the message that you're sharing with them. In some cases, PowerPoint presentations or handouts using flip charts or props or videos can be terrific tools to switch up the pace, to get people to really interact and connect. Sometimes it can be about touching stuff. Sometimes it can be about listening to information in a different way. Other times where maybe where you're having a discussion and a reflection, it might not be appropriate to use visual aids, where you just want to sit down and you want to focus on each other to talk about it. So making sure that you think about your visual aids and incorporating those in where it's appropriate. As part of the delivery as well, really should think about practicing beforehand. It's like everything, the more practice, the what is it that they say? Perfect practice makes perfect. So the more that we practice something and hopefully practice it well, the more proficient we'll become. And of course, it's natural to be nervous and anxious before a presentation. If we weren't nervous and anxious, we would probably be underprepared. We wouldn't have done due diligence leading up to it, and our performance would not be at the best that it can be. So just making sure that we I recognize that those nerves are actually a positive thing, and we just need to harness those in the right direction. So by using those nerves to make sure that we're prepared, making sure that we visualize a great presentation. Look, I've done my preparation, I've had my practice, I'm feeling really confident about the content, and I know it in my mind. I can see people smiling, I can see people nodding, I can see people connecting with what I'm going to do. I'm really excited about the opportunity to really show people what I've got and to practice my skill here. And this is all about embracing that energy. Um, but when you actually get to the presentation, just making sure that you're breathing, you're controlling your breathing, you're relaxing your shoulders, you're grounding your feet, just grounding onto the floor, making sure that you feel grounded and connected. These are some of the great techniques that can help you. And these are the type you want to know, you want to be practicing these techniques before your presentation so you know what works for you and what doesn't. And just also basic things like making sure you get a good night's sleep, making sure that you have um, a proper breakfast and a proper meal beforehand so that your body just is physically it's going through the normal routine. Often people get nervous, they don't sleep very well, they don't eat because they're nervous, they get to the presentation, their body can't function because they don't have the normal energy that they would normally have to be able to perform at a high level. So people are flat or just feel nauseous through it. So making sure that you do that. And and just recognize that it's natural and we all get nervous. Even if you've been doing this for a long time, you still get nervous. But it's about switching your perception on it to say this is actually really positive nerves rather than negative nerves. And there's also thinking about things such as, your lead up to the presentation, making sure that you get there with adequate time so that you're not running late and stressed out about that. making sure that you mentally own the space. So, up here, this presenting, this is my space. I own this space. Everyone here is coming here because they're excited to hear me talk. Making sure that you meet and greet people as they come through. That helps you to really make those personal connections and be in the moment. Visualize that successful presentation. Keep reminding yourself that you know your stuff. Um, and you're really there to have a good conversation with your audience. Remember, your audience will be empathetic. Everybody, well, most of us, can put ourselves in a presenter's shoes and understand the stress and anxiety that comes with presenting. Um, a great technique is always to ask questions. Take the focus off yourself, put it back onto the audience. So, does anybody here have any experience with Database XYZ? Have you heard anything about Database XYZ? Has anyone seen any reviews out there? So just by simply asking questions, I'm switching the focus away from myself and to the audience, and that can be really helpful. Making sure you have your water with you, keep hydrated, and as I said before, breathe in, smiling, and just try and pause and enjoy that moment. With the delivery, just making sure that you're following your plan. Your plan, it's going to be coherent, it's going to be logical, it's going to flow. You're talking to your main points. You're not necessarily just reading through your notes. You want to have your key points from your presentation that are in your presentation plan, and then speak to those points. Speak. You've done your preparation. You know your content. Feel confident that you can speak to the points rather than the reading verbatim off your notes. And try and wherever possible to minimize your filler words. Like. It's a bit difficult for me to say that because you've probably noticed that I'm a bit pause quite a bit when I talk, and that's just my natural speaking style. That's not too bad as long as it's not too distracting, but I always should be working towards reducing that. Making sure you're making eye contact with the audience, making sure that your body language is positive and demonstrates confidence and inclusion, using those visual aids as we talked about wherever appropriate, and making sure that your slides, if you're using PowerPoint slides, that you're not too many of them. There's not too many words within the slides, not overly information. You're not reading from the slides and expecting the audience to read it as well, but they're there as a signpost for the content that you're sharing with them verbally. So part of that is making sure your slides are easy to read, easy to look at, and appropriate to the context. Making sure your language is appropriate, making sure your pronunciation and enunciation of the words is correct, making sure your voice is clear and well projected, making sure your pace is appropriate, making sure that you're engaging the audience with questions and that you're showing familiarity with the content. And importantly, you're managing your time well. So all these things we've talked about, but just to sort of put it together in one slide, really important things when doing the delivery. And again, these we've talked about all these, but just to sort of cluster it all together. Finally, just making sure that we prepare time at the end for questions if appropriate, and try and think as many questions that you might get asked beforehand so you're prepared. It's always a good idea to repeat the question so the rest of the audience can hear it if they're in danger of not being able to hear what the question is clearly. Making sure that you answer truthfully and in a timely manner, which means that if you don't know the answer, let them know and tell them that you'll get back to them. Be patient. If it is a great question, thank the person. Don't be afraid to say that. And sometimes it's great to involve the whole audience. Tony asked this great question. Does anybody know what the answer to that might be? And then you can just follow in and clean up the response at the end. You might add your little bit to it if you wish.